Thank you.
Yeah, I was excited that the Kauffman Foundation this year, I thought, did a better job of trying to make sure that there were more rural presenters. And I was really happy about that when I saw it, because I had debated not attending this year because, there so oftentimes it seems like everything is geared toward, the Kansas Cities and what I have found is that even those people who do talk about rural, when I look up the populations of the communities that they're talking about, they're, cities of 50,000 people or 30,000 people. And it's like, no, that's not rural where we come from. I mean, in terms of the population we work with, you know, it's just not, and it does make a big difference. Even a city of 50,000 has capacity to do a lot more, than a city of, 2,500 people or 5,000 people or whatever,
Yeah.
And so I'm usually disappointed by the fact that, when people talk about rural, they're not talking about the same thing. And so, I was really happy this time that there were actually, presenters that were from what we consider rural areas. So that was exciting.
Yes. I'm with you.
Well, I think we should probably go ahead and get started. I know we're, still missing quite a few people, but hopefully people will come on later, or if not, we will make sure that they get the recording. So, I'll just say a couple words if that's okay with you, Jared, and then I'll turn it over to you. So, Welcome everyone. I'm Deb Martin with the Great Lakes Community Action Partnership, and we are really excited to kick off our small community economic development webinar series today. And we have a whole series of webinars planned, and this is our first one. And as Roberta had mentioned, the two of us virtually met Jared when he presented at the Kauffman Foundation's Entrepreneurship Summit, and we were both really impressed with his presentation. And so I reached out to him in that venue, knowing that we were going to plan this webinar series, and he was gracious enough to respond right away and say yes, he'd be interested in working with us. And Jared is formerly the executive director of an organization called SOAR in Kentucky, which stands for, hope I'll get this right, Shaping Our Appalachian Region.
That's it.
Okay. And that he can tell you more about that organization, but he recently has left the organization to go out on his own as a consultant. And so that's fortunate for us, so that he's able to do work with us. And one of the things he had talked about at the Kauffman presentation that I found really very interesting was this idea about remote work, and particularly given the state that we're in currently with the pandemic, I think it has really brought a focus to remote work that, previously maybe wasn't there. I mean, it was certainly a trend before, but I don't know that it was as highlighted as it has been now. And I really suspect that, this is going to change work in ways that, we maybe can't imagine right now. But, I suspect that a lot of that, I think a lot of companies have seen that people can work remotely. And so I expect that a lot of that will stay even after the pandemic is over. And I thought it was really interesting that, Gallup did a survey in 2018 of people who work in urban areas and found that a full 27% of them said that their preferred place to live would be rural or small towns. And so to me, that was like really eye-opening that, what typically is stopping them, I think, is that their jobs are in those more urban areas. And, if we can, shift that and, look more at remote work and people have a choice about where they want to live, then I think it opens a huge opportunity for, our communities to really showcase all of the advantages that they have to offer and to really try and court some of that population to, reverse that tide of young people leaving and all that. And so I just think there's tremendous opportunity, and we just have to figure out how best to take advantage of that. And so Jared is here today to help us with that, and I am going to shut up and turn it over to him.
Deb, thanks so much. I got one quick question. Remind me again on time. What are we supposed to wrap up at 10? Or
I'm trying to think. That's what we said, right, Roberta? An hour?
Yes, and we were hoping to have some time for discussion at the end. So, or unless you want people to just kind of, raise their hand with questions as we go.
yeah, we can do a little bit of both of that if as we go through. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'd love this to be a discussion.
And I think too that the group agreed that, if we go over by, because we really debated about, hour and a half, and I think most of the group agreed that if we go over by 15 minutes or something, that everybody was okay with that. So, and
Okay.
if people need to leave, they'll leave. So, I don't think it has to be like a hard and fast rule. So,
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Deb. Well, it's great to be with you all this morning and share a little bit of my experience. I'll kind of give you an overview of what I plan to talk about, a little bit of our story and how remote work became infused into our strategy here in Appalachia, Kentucky, where over a 3-year period with several different partners, we were able to place over 3,000 people in remote jobs that were already living in our region. So there's a bit of maybe two different ways to look at this opportunity as it comes to rural. But one is this idea that people who are working remotely in other places are looking for new places to move to. So there's kind of recruiting the remote work talent, and that definitely exists. And I've got some resources to point you to of examples around that. Tulsa has actually made that a primary recruiting tool for them. They offer incentives to people to move there and work remotely. But our work was more about taking the unemployed, underemployed people in our region and connecting them to work opportunities. And so that's what most of my presentation will be about. And so hopefully that will be helpful to you. I want to just share a little bit about me. This is my family, my wife, 2 kids, little girl's getting ready to turn 11, little boy's getting ready to turn 2. And we live right here in the heart of central Appalachia, just outside of Pikeville, Kentucky. Deb was sharing populations. The work we did at SOAR is about a quarter of the geography of the state of Kentucky. And in that space, the largest town was about 6,500 people. So this is a lot of geography and a lot of small towns that we're working in. I'm born and raised in this region, 30 minutes from where we live now. And thank you, Deb. This is, as I say, our starter home that we never finished. We're still remodeling it, been remodeling it since 2008. But we are rural. I was raised in the head of what we call down here hollers. And I was in 6th grade when we got the internet. I started an eBay store when I was in high school. Got involved in music, and I'm an entrepreneur. I own a guitar store here in the region. We ship guitars all over the country. Also got involved in the community and economic development. I've been to a lot. I've got an MBA. I've done, Oklahoma University's Economic Development Institute of Management for a nonprofit management, but I've learned the most by doing. And so I want to just share with you some of those experiences, a little bit about the organization. I was the founding executive director of SOAR. I was there for 6 years. Just transitioned about 2 weeks ago. One, to spend some more time with my company, the Guitar Store, and I've just got a passion for rural. I just really believe in the future of rural communities when they leverage connectivity and technology. So I want to help people do that both at home but across the globe. Honestly, I was on a call 3 days ago with entrepreneurship ecosystem builders in Australia, and so this whole the pandemic has really flattened the globe, right? We are able to connect in totally different ways, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Several years ago, this guy, Jeff Whitehead, he was one of our key partners at SOAR. He ran the Workforce Innovation Board in Eastern Kentucky. And I was with him. We were at a conference in Washington, D.C. over the days we used to be able to travel. And he shared this quote. And he was talking about Appalachia, which is if you're not familiar with Appalachia, you got part of us in Ohio. Some of you may be in Appalachian communities in Ohio, but it's this eastern mountain range of mountains where there's been historically challenges economically. And so he was talking about Appalachia. He said, I believe it's time for Appalachia for us move past this idea that we are a problem to be solved and own the fact that we might be a solution to be discovered. And as I really thought about that and the work that we were doing, he's absolutely right. It's what we were living. And I think it's this core mindset that remote work it's a bit of a shift to that this thought process changing from we look at rural communities and say, man, they're just a problem to be solved. Yet in today's age, we really believe that we are a solution to be discovered. And that is how we shifted our mindset at SOAR. We went from, being another charitable organization that was asking people to help, impoverished Appalachia to really making a value proposition. And so this is just a map to kind of let you see where we were. Let's see. I saw this annotation tool. Let me see if I can make that work. Maybe. Let's pick a color. So right here, I am right there today, and this space right here, Eastern Kentucky, is where our work was focused. This is a map by the Appalachian Regional Commission that shows counties at 5 different economic levels. Red is the worst, and so this region that we were working in is the largest geographic swath of poverty in America. And so as we looked at that, and as I got into the work early on at SOAR, and I'd been in economic development, I'd recruited industry, I was an entrepreneur. We began to realize 2 years into my job at SOAR, I started asking the question, when are we finished? Like, how many jobs do we need to create? How many people do we need to put to work to where we can say SOAR's done, it can go home? And so I used, and this was not scientific, but I just started doing some of my own kind of census research for the own county that I lived in, Floyd County, where we have about 12,000 people, 18 years and older, and according to the census, about 1,500 jobs. All right, so that's a huge gap from the amount of people that are there versus the amount of jobs that are available. And so I did that to the core of the region that we were working in. It came to this just kind of monumental number that became a number we kind of wrote on the wall that really kind of fired us up as inspiration. It was 30,000. When you change your goal from just saying we want to make things better, we want to create some jobs, to realize, okay, if we want to solve the problem, it's employ 30,000 people. And through that came this idea that was a bit of an existing, see if I can get my slide to go now. An existing, there was a small little pocket of it in our region. And it required us to think, wait, does a job have to be in our community? Is the only way to create jobs to create another manufacturing plant or an industrial park and recruit a company to start there? And so I started doing this search. We had this program called Teleworks USA. That was when SOAR started 6 years ago. They had one hub in a rural community. It was ran by our Workforce Innovation Board. I'll share a little bit about this group and how they function, but everybody in standard economic development, and including myself prior to SOAR, thought, what are they doing? That's not real economic development. That does not, that's not recruiting industry, or it's not business retention expansion. It's not, small business or entrepreneurship development. And so I was one of the naysayers at the beginning of saying that's not real economic development. But what happened when SOAR started is the director of this program SOAR started with this massive summit where we just brought everybody together to listen, to help chart a path beyond coal. We were a coal community. We'd lost 12,000 of 18,000 jobs. And our governor and congressman got together and said, we want to listen. We got to do something different. Coal's never going to be the same. And it was a bipartisan effort. It was amazing. One of the few that I believe was deeply sincere and really unlocked the power of this region to take ownership of its own future. And so Jeff Whitehead, at our second summit, the director of the program, he stood on the SOAR Summit stage and said, I'm going to commit to open more Teleworks hubs and expand this remote work idea. We were able over the years to start to tell the story of the one hub they had. When we bring those 1,000 people together every year, we went and did videos. We interviewed people who had gotten jobs. We interviewed the hub managers. We shared those metrics, the successes. And through our network and work, they now have 9 hubs in different communities and have expanded their program. But it started as this thing that nobody really thought was real. And so back to my numbers, 30,000. And so I knew remote work was kind of out there, and we were starting to kind of talk about it and champion it. And so I started just Googling online and just finding as many stats as I could about it. And I came across this website called flexjobs.com. And this is a website, it's kind of like an Indeed for remote and flexible work. And I started searching. I realized, a lot of the first jobs we were placing people in were customer service related jobs. And then I got on this site and I realized you can be an accountant, you can be a teacher. I've met nurses. If you call the back of your health insurance card and talk to a telehealth nurse, most of the time they're at their home. You can be a designer. You can be a computer coder. This is not limited to just the technology field, but it's really open to any career path and not just entry level. You can build an entire career in a remote fashion. But the number that hit me is I got to, on their search, it had a little ticker of how many jobs they had posted on FlexJobs. And at that time, it was close to 33,000. And I said, okay, here we go. This is it. 30,000. They've got 33,000. Like the rest of the country can have those 3. We'll take the 30. That 30,000, we got to connect our people to these opportunities. A job does not have to be created. We can actually connect people to existing opportunities. So that's how we started down the path, and really got some fire under us about it. And so I want to share with you, that's kind of the story. And I want to just share 5 kind of key, as I look back at it, what were some key things that made it successful. And so I'm going to talk about those 5 things. And I did a quick search yesterday on FlexJobs. Right now there's 29,000 jobs on there. And this was prior to COVID. This was before so many people are working remotely now, even in traditional jobs in our community, employers are hiring remotely. And so they had, I think it was 11,000 that were full-time and fully remote. The rest, some of them were flex jobs, gig jobs, part-time, flexible, remote. But if you can imagine right now, that means there are 11,000 jobs in your community right now waiting to be filled, because these can be worked from anywhere. So with kind of that thought in mind, I'll walk you through these 5 keys to success. I'll share a little bit about each one. And again, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to put it into the chat. I saw those popping up earlier. I'm happy to address them. If you want to save them to the end, you can. Or you can raise your hand. Let's just have a good discussion about this. I'm going to give you all 5, and then I'll spend time on each one. The first one is vision. Somebody said earlier, Deb, I think, we couldn't imagine this. Part of this work and economic development feels like a lot of nuts and bolts sometimes, but this requires some vision, some reimagination of a job, of a community, and we'll talk a bit about that. The second thing is it's a team effort. A city can't do this alone. One organization can't do this alone. We'll talk about who the right stakeholders are, who needs to be at the table, and how to keep them at the table. This is, right, if you're putting people to work, an incredibly important relationship is with employers. We do this a lot in community action programs and the community college workforce programs, where we work with local employers. This, again, requires some reimagination, but who are the national employers? Maybe there's an employer in your community already doing this, hiring remotely, but how do we build credible relationships with them? I'll talk a little bit more about that. Physical space with connectivity was critical in what we did in these rural communities. And then this has got to be strategic. It cannot be standalone. Got to be part of a broader strategy. So let's talk about them just real quick, each one. Vision, willingness to reimagine. This is just a quick stat, as Deb was talking. Again, this is pre-COVID, so we don't have all the data now to know what's the world going to look like in the future. I think we'd all agree it's not going to look like what it did, 9 months ago. The world is different. This is a change. This is a change in a moment in history. I think we will all look back and say that was a change in trajectory in the way the world works. And so this was some stats. 91% say technology influences their job choice. 51% will be freelancing. A majority of people do not want careers. They do not want, with one company, this idea that you're going to work there and retire with the nice corporate watch. That world has shifted. 80% want to work with cutting edge technology. 65% of children in primary schools today will work in jobs that don't exist yet. 90% prefer to choose their work location. This is the workforce of tomorrow. Another point, Deb hit. The reality is our children, the next generation, they are going to be working in this world from somewhere. It might as well be your town. It might as well be home. And that's what we have built kind of this entire effort on in Appalachia, is that it's okay. We understand some people are going to have to leave. If you want to be, if you want to be if you want to work in aquatics and marine life, right, you have to leave Appalachia. We don't have an ocean here. But if you should have options, economic options, to stay in your rural community. And so we've been working to try to deliver those through remote opportunities and sharing that story. So part of this vision and willingness to reimagine, sometimes you have to find the people, right, that can see it, see something that is not traditional, that's totally outside the box. And we had this one county judge executive in a very rural county that I'll talk about in one of the hubs we were able to help start. It's in Owsley County, a little town called Booneville. I think the population of the entire county of Owsley County is about 4,000. The town is less than 1,000. This is, as rural as you get. And the county judge executive there, he's probably in his 70s. And we got him on video. I was wanting to share some videos today. I didn't know how it would work with technology, so I'll send you links afterwards. But him saying, man, I could have never imagined growing up as a kid, somebody telling me I could have worked from my home. That doesn't even make sense to me. But I believe in it. And because he believed in it, it empowered his local community to start trying something they had never tried before. And so he had this vision to reimagine, and it was from a very unlikely character in their town. And so when he was saying, we need this remote work hub in our town, people started to come together and find a way to make it happen. And he says in the video, we had a goal of 50 jobs. Can we place people in 50 jobs? That now is over 200 people working remotely. I was at the hub one day, went over to visit, and one of the employees there, he was working. We can't say for Apple, but he was working for a service provider for Apple, so doing like technical support on iPhones. And he had moved from 2 counties over to work for Apple in Booneville. Okay, and this is, and the county judge is saying, I've got the local restaurant downtown, the mom and pop restaurant, that's saying we've never had this many people at lunch. Right? Because we're bringing money from outside the region in. You got 200 employees, 20%. They were from around the county, but 200 of 4,000 now are people employed in careers that have health insurance, that have hope of careers, and it's just changing that little town. But it started with a vision. It started with someone who's willing to reimagine. Let's talk real quick about the team effort, the broad stakeholder buy-in, and who needs to be at the table. These are, I think, 5 of the key ones. We're going to spend more time on employers in just a moment. But if the jobs in the future of your community don't have to be in your community, and these jobs already exist, this requires a bit of effort from your educators and your workforce training partners. Because, and I'm going to talk about ours here in this region, they are training people for jobs that may not exist at some point, or definitely do not exist in our region. Right? So this challenge that this becomes a solution for the workforce providers as well, as saying, well, what do we train people for when there are no jobs here? So we use digital economy as like this broad swath to say this. We need training partners, reimagining and doing training that involves things in the digital economy. If somebody's going to get a bachelor's degree in writing, they should know how to make money on a blog. They should know how to do Google ads. They should know, like, infusing this mindset of the digital economy in the world that we live in requires educators and your workforce partners to buy in and work closely with maybe a national employer to deploy a local training program. We've had some of that happen for remote employees. Local government many times can be the lead in this. We've had hubs that worked in communities where, the local government was not leading it. They just said, okay. But they can be a vehicle to secure funding, to build consensus, and be at the table to help move this forward. Key partners in this: utility and broadband providers. Broadband, as part of SOAR's work was on infrastructure, was we need connectivity in this region, and then the essence of the blueprint, the plan. When we brought all those people together, we heard input from 3,000 people, and we wrote what we call the blueprint for the future of Appalachia. Has 7 kind of key tenets. The first one is broadband connectivity. The other 6, I always say, is, well, what are we going to do with it? How does it affect workforce, entrepreneurship, local foods, tourism, healthy communities, all these pieces. So when we started talking about, the broadband provider said, we offer broadband, but nobody buys it. There's this adoption rate in rural communities that's typically low for rural broadband providers. This is a huge benefit for them, right? Because you are building a demand for their service. So they have a reason to be at the table, and many times in our hubs, the local broadband provider will offer free or discounted broadband to the physical hub. And then we have one in one community in Jackson County where as people go there, they get their job, they spend 2 or 3 months working in the hub, they usually transition to their home. They offer a discount. If you are one of those graduates who've gone through that program, you get a monthly discount for your home internet service. So these are key partners, utility partners as well. Most of them, electric, water, sewer, all these have an interest in developing the economy. This is a new way to do it, to retain population that has disposable income. This is just a new way of doing economic development. And then I threw one broad group in there, citizens. Right, this is helping them understand and buy in and realize that work does not have to be a place you go; it can be a thing you do. Not everybody has to do that, right? I got a lady that cuts my hair, and she used to ask me, said, "What are y'all working on? What are you doing?" And I would tell her, I talked to her about this, and she said, "I'm glad that's not me. I could never work from home. I could never work from a computer." I said, well, all those people need to get their hair cut. They also need to buy houses and build houses. And so this is not everybody in a community, but a large part of the next generation is going to be doing it somewhere, and it brings money that drives local economic activity. This is a component of the strategy. So this is kind of the key stakeholders that were involved in most of our successful efforts. The employers, one thing that Teleworks USA was able to do is they started building these relationships with large national employers that were moving to remote work. So groups like Kelly Connect, Convergence, these are mostly customer service type positions where if you call U-Haul to rent a U-Haul, you get someone at home. If you call Radisson Hotels to reserve, you call the 800 number to reserve a room, that goes to someone at home. And so we built relationships with their hiring managers, their talent search, their talent acquisition teams. And so we would work with them at the local level to do job fairs, and we would understand what the requirement was for their job, and we would screen local applicants and then filter them to what the right potential position could be and a good fit for them. And so we had one of these companies that said, when we think of hiring remote employees, we think of you all, because nobody else is making this a chief strategy and has an entire team around it. We were delivering consistent, being able to fill 100 jobs. If they were spinning up something, they needed 100 people, we could consistently place them, and they had good retention, and our people were excited because many times they were driving 2 hours or driving an hour one way to work a minimum wage job. And so this was an incredible opportunity for them. This was an employer right in the middle of the pandemic. that reached out to us. I met with them several times. They do typical brick and mortar customer service type call centers. They had kind of been against remote work. When COVID hit, they called and said, "Hey, are you all still doing that? We need to add some jobs, and we're looking at remote work now." So in the middle of the pandemic, because we were positioned, we added almost 100 new jobs across our hubs in Eastern Kentucky for this one company. And we're still doing hiring job fairs and hiring fairs in the middle of the pandemic with remote work employer partners. This is not impossible to do. These people that work for these employers. You can go to Flex Jobs and see who are the companies that are hiring remotely. They have the top 100. You can do the research and find the people and email them and start to build relationships with them. That's one thing we found. These are all just normal people that really want to help. And you're coming not saying solve our problem. We were coming saying you need a workforce. We have people. You need a trained workforce. We have training partners and people and connectivity. We are not a problem to be solved. You need rural. You need our communities to be successful in what you're trying to do. The physical space, this one in Boonville that I was telling you about is in an old shopping mall, retrofitted. The local community raised. We were able to help them get a $100,000 grant through the state. USDA Rural Development's been a consistent funder of some of these hubs. And the local Owsley County Action Team, which is made up of several different key stakeholders there, really led the effort to get this hub located here. People's Rural Telephone, the broadband provider, offered free broadband. And so it was just, again, a team effort. But it's a physical space where if you're in the community and you're interested in this work, you can go meet with the hub manager, see what job opportunities are out there. They offer typically a 1 to 2 week customer service, basic computer use training program. And you can work in the hub for up to 3 months, I think, without renting a cubicle or space. And then you transition to your home where you can continue to rent space there. So physical space with the connectivity is really important. In rural communities, if yours are like ours, people like to walk in and see people and build relationships that way. And then some of these communities, internet connectivity in the town, but outside the town is not so great. So having this kind of dedicated place where you can get connected and get work has been really beneficial. We have some counties now looking at doing their own co-working space. If you can imagine a rural town takes the old building, the community gets a grant, refits the old building that could employ 50 people and creates this co-working space where now there's 50 people working there, but they all work for different companies. It's just a place where they meet and go to work every day. Hopefully post-COVID when we can all be together again. But that's a real possibility. Strategic. So ours was part of a broader strategy. I talked a little bit about the blueprint that, first is broadband connectivity. And we think this is a solid kind of framework for all rural communities to be thinking about. If we're going to be successful in the future, it will be leveraging technology. If we're going to get to that 30,000 number that we need in our region, it's only by figuring out how to leverage technology and connectivity for economic growth. So this remote work is just a piece. We also want to see these people start their own companies, digital, tech related companies that are thinking about a market outside of their region. And so entrepreneurship is a key part of the work that we've been doing. But remote work is just building people, making them feel comfortable with digital economy, skill sets, and experiences. Healthy communities, telemedicine, we've deployed that across the region, and different healthcare providers worked with workforce partners to train nurses on how to use telehealth equipment. how do we get expanded access to care, to specialists in rural communities? Lots of opportunities there, industrial development, foods, tourism, all these pieces play into the part. I think I'd just like to say, make remote work a component of your community's strategy. It can't be everything. Not everybody's going to want to do that. But there's a lot of ground to be made and a lot of opportunity if you integrate it into what you are doing. So we'll just look at each of these through real quick, and I'll have each of you kind of think, what's the missing piece in your community? As I looked at those kind of 5 keys to success, what are the missing pieces? So vision, who's the person? I mean, you could jot down names right now. You could be thinking, who is the person? You may know somebody. You may have a friend, a cousin, a brother, an aunt or uncle that, has always been the weird one that, works from home, and nobody knows what they do. It's time to make that the norm. It's time to tell that story. It's time to find those people, and bring them together. I mean, you could do, Zoom meetings with your remote workers that are already working remotely in your community and hear from them. But who is the vision? And maybe it's you. Maybe you're going to have to be the one that steps up and says, this is something we need to look at and be a part of. But it takes a leader. It takes somebody to step up and continually say that and share the vision of what's possible. Team effort, as you think about those stakeholders, who's not at the table, what's your community college, what's your local school system, what are they doing as it relates to STEAM and the digital economy? Who are the employers in your community? And so there's let me say this real quick as we talk about employers. There's an inverse of this, right? As COVID has hit, where we now have like our major hospital here in Pikeville, they put 150 employees in all remote work. And all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off in their head and says, wait, if I'm going to hire the best cost analyst that I can hire, in our insurance department, reimbursement department, I've always interviewed that person in my office, but they would not have to be here, right? So there's this inverse that now maybe your local employers are starting to realize that they can source talent from anywhere. So let's be on our A game and be on the front of it, on the front end, and say we are going to develop high class, high quality talent here to meet the needs of the future. So who are those employers? And I'll give you some websites here at the end where you can go find those and begin to work with them. Physical space, is there existing co-working space? Does someone have space downtown, or does the community college have space that is available that you could convert into a co-working space that already has strong connectivity, that you can kind of become visible in the community for this type of opportunity? Might not be the best time to open a co-working space, but let's be thinking about it in the future as we transition this. It's a critical piece of the puzzle. So you may have to get creative, given social distancing restrictions, of how you make this present in the community and give people access. And then strategic. What's the broader strategy? Does this fit in? Maybe I've helped write, and I've been in a lot of communities where the strategy was we need to get our industrial park, increase water capacity. We need to build a spec building, and maybe this is just like totally. It's from here's your plan. It's way out here. So just be thinking about how that interacts with both your local plan, maybe a SEDS, the regional plan, and what gaps there might be there. I talked a little bit about funding. The question, as I was putting this together, I was thinking, I know if I was here, I would be thinking, well, how did you pay for all this? How do you build it? And so Teleworks USA is funded by several different pieces. There's been some state coal severance money state tax money that have gone in to help start hubs. There's lots of WIOA money. The Workforce Investment Board uses to staff these hubs and have staff managers. We've got USDA rural development grants to help open hubs. A typical hub costs $100,000 to $150,000 to start. That's getting computers, the equipment. It just depends on how ready the space is, the networking that exists there. Community development block grants, local grants, community foundations. There's lots of ways to kind of source this investment. There's also a possibility of the employers paying some portion of this cost because you're really helping them solve a problem. We've not got to that yet, but I think it's definitely an opportunity. A couple resources here, and I think they'll send these slides out, or I will. And I also want to give you some links to some videos that we put together around this. TeleworksUSA.com, Digital Careers Now is another program we started with the community colleges here in our region to do specific workforce training for national employers. FlexJobs.com. When I got to that number, when I realized they had all those jobs, I literally searched and found the CEO and emailed her, Sarah Sutton is her name, and said, hey, we are trying to do this in rural, and I didn't say it exactly like this, but we want all your jobs. And so they have these posted for all these different companies, but we built a relationship with them. That's something that's replicable. I mentioned Tulsa a little bit. You can go see their website. They are actively, it's basically they pay you $10,000 over the first year if you will move there and work remotely. So that's some of our competition. And then there's afuture.org is a website we launched at SOAR. You can find more about our blueprint and all the projects that are happening there. I'm going to wrap up and take some questions with this kind of final thought. There was a lady who worked in our SOAR office for about 4 years, and as she was leaving, she worked in the public health side of our work, and she was a public health associate advisor, worked for the CDC. And she was leaving our office, and she was moving to Atlanta for another career opportunity. And she sent this email out to our entire team at SOAR, all our staff. I said, in order to, she said, this has been an incredible experience. You all have become like family. And she said, there's one thing that I will not forget, that I will take with me. And she said, in order to accomplish outcomes that have never been realized, you have to do things that have never been done. And I was sitting in my office and I got that email and I read that last sentence and I said, that so aptly defines what we are trying to do. This reality that we don't know the future, but to solve these massive problems we're up against, to capitalize on what we believe are the real opportunities, we cannot go read the plan that we had 10 years ago and copy and paste. We also have got to take some risks. There are going to be some things we're going to try that don't work. We've tried things, they didn't work. Failure is okay when you're in this space. And so I jumped out of my office and I was saying, that is it. What Jenna said, this is who we are. This is what we have to do. We have to do things that have never been done. Where'd you get that quote, Jenna? Because she was across the office. And she said, you said it in a staff meeting like 2 years ago. And I don't remember. I don't think I said it. But this became part of what we were trying to do. It became ingrained in what I'm trying to do still, is to realize that in rural communities, my hope for you is that coming out of this, you try to do some things that have never been done. And so I want to be with you and support you in that. And just remember this truth. Think about your rural community different. You've got a workforce to offer. You've got amazing livable spaces. You've got, less density of people, less risk of, health risk as it relates to that, and COVID transmission. You are not up against it anymore in rural communities. It's the world has turned to you, to turn to us for solutions. In our own state, we need 30,000 jobs. Louisville, Kentucky needs 30,000 people. The answer is not everybody uproot and go live somewhere else. This idea of sourcing talent and distributed work is the future, and it requires getting things together, having a strategy, the right stakeholders, and a vision to reimagine and realize, as I say, this is not my grandmother's Appalachia, but she would love the fact that we are making progress toward her grandchildren and my grandchildren being able to still live in this community. So let me finish there and see if we have any questions, and I'd love to have some discussion.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything in the chat here, but I know that I probably took more notes in this hour than I took in, 3 days of other trainings that I've sat in on. So thank you for all of your thoughts and ideas. And I have a lot to look into.
Thank you. Any questions at all, discussions, comments? I'd love to kind of hear what people are thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just going to add to what Roberta said. I don't want to take up time from other people that may have questions, but I'll just add to what she said in saying that, I think this has been really, really great, and exactly what we were hoping for to get people thinking in a different way. So thank you, Jared, and hopefully people will have some questions, or if you don't have questions now, this doesn't necessarily need to be the last time that we hear from Jared. Maybe if anyone has a serious interest in this, then, maybe we can discuss, further arrangements with him. So anyway, I'll shut up now so that you guys can ask questions if you have them.
Mm-hmm.
This is Audrey from the OSHA Extension Office. I don't necessarily have a question. I just really think that quote you shared, Jared, resonated as I look at within the programming that I do. A lot of our families are really tied to their traditions and a lot of the things that have been strong factors within our community, so much so that they forget to look outside of that box per se. As that's an analogy I've been using a lot recently, is the box that if we can somehow work together to create a little bit of a community that is willing to open up a little bit to the changes, and not that I'm looking to change their traditions, but maybe to expand upon them, I think the possibilities are endless as to where we can grow and build as from a community, because I think they're going to start to realize the things that are available to them or within our community that they've been closed off to for so long.
Yeah, I think that thought process of saying, this is going to be different, and there's going to be people that think you can't do it, shouldn't do it, or but there are always that group. There's always that group that thinks you can or wants to, and if you can just become a convener, even if it's 3 people. Right, even if you just get three people that are open to it and start saying, what can we do to just start to share this story, and not just in remote work, but in anything. If you can find the core, I always say there will always be people who think you can't. Find the ones who think you can and go do some things. Mm-hmm. And so yeah.
Hi, Jared. My name is Ruth Reynard. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thank you for your presentation. I'm a newbie here to this area, And so that's why I'm not talking and just letting everybody who knows way more than I do talk. But just to let you know, since we came here, I've started a nonprofit, and it's called Community Education for Development. And my big thing for years, I've written articles, I've been in higher education for years, is exactly what you were talking about how skills are changing, and that, you know, work is changing, and that technology is here to stay, and it's growing and it's changing. And I honestly think, like, I have a very strange background. I'm a missionary kid, so I was born in Congo. And what I've seen is that a lot of times places, like you said, Appalachia, it's not what your grandma knew. And for years, people look down and say, oh, you're from there, you know, what's going on there? Nothing, as usual. And it's the same kind of thing in rural areas. And I think, honestly, rural areas are really well situated to completely, what's the word for it, like jump over everybody else and get ahead, because there are fewer things around to stop us. So I feel like this whole idea of collaborating, innovation, moving forward, preparing people for the future is just where rural communities can leap ahead hugely. So I'm totally supportive of your ideas. I enjoyed your presentation, and I hope that our area stays in touch with you, because I have a lot of planning and funding and so on to get as well.
That's great. There was a saying, I just forgot the author that said it, but he said about Kentucky, he wanted to be here when the world ends because everything happens here 20 years later.
Yeah, there you go.
And so we took that as a challenge and said, we think rural could be the first. We think we can be on the front end of things for once. One, because we don't have as large of a kind of complex system that urban communities have to shift. Like, we can shift pretty much quicker if we get everybody on the same page.
And actually, something that people wouldn't even think of, even a country like Congo, is actually moving faster in the area of new energies and sustainable agriculture than even here, because there's nobody to stop them or nobody to question them. So, I feel this is the day for rural communities to catapult ahead. It's great.
I have a couple of questions. I'm Dave Birch. First question is from the time you got the vision for this, how long did it take before you began to see results? And the second question that kind of goes along with that is, what kind of roadblocks did you run into along the way?
Yeah, I think the original vision for, Teleworks USA, which is the program that really has been the successful one in the region, probably started 2 or 3 years before SOAR, so nearly 10 years ago is probably when it was founded, and it was founded in a community college with this same mindset, but at a time when nobody, literally, when they first launched it, everybody thought it was crazy, right? All the traditional economic developers, all the community leaders, it took their first executive director they hired, which ended up working for us at SOAR doing other work. But he was literally on the road every day going into these communities saying, this is possible, this is possible, this is possible. And consistently saying, no, it's not, no, it's not. And so they finally found one community that decided to start a hub in Jackson County. They are now over 600 people in a county of about 20,000 working remotely, been placed through that hub. But I think probably the first 3 or 4 years was really difficult. It was 3 years of kind of beating the pavement and a few job placements and starting to see a little successes, enough to keep the funding and the major visionary kind of engaged with it. But really SOAR, when we were able, in this kind of credible vehicle, to put them on the stage and say, this is part of the broader regional strategy, and then share kind of stories of we got a video of this girl that tells her story of how this changed her life, right? In a rural community, have this opportunity, how she's gotten promotions and insurance for her kids. It began, all of a sudden every community is like, we've got to have one of these. So that was probably a 3 to 5 year effort to get it from that's crazy to everybody wants one. And then, really another 3 to 4 years. From that point, it really started escalating and started opening new hubs and job placements. I think the roadblocks are, you're going to have local officials who maybe they have occupational tax, and they're going to say, how do I track who's working here and if they're really paying, some of those questions. And then, just the traditional economic development mindset, which I was one of those people. So if you're there, I'm not just talking about you. This was hard for me to wrap my mind around at first. Until I realized the problem we were up against and realized traditional economic development might be able, if we were the most successful we've ever been in the history of Appalachia, we might put 10,000 people to work. And we had lost 12,000 in the coal industry. And before we lost the 12,000, we were in the bottom 10% of the country economically. So saying our plan is a plan to be last is not good enough. And so that's just takes effort, takes leadership.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, we're seeing if there's any more questions. I've got my my website, thefutureofrural.com. This is something I've literally just launched this week, and I'm just kind of starting to talk about and flesh out. I've got on there where you can schedule a time. It's synced up with my calendar. If you want to have a one-off conversation, that I'm trying to do this consulting different than other people have done it. So you can literally pay for a chunk of time, and we can just get together and chat. But I've got a promo code, RCAP. If you want to spend 30 minutes after this and you got specific things you'd like to dig into details on, or you want to tell me kind of what you're working on, I'd be happy to share insights around that. So, thefutureofrural.com, and then, book a session, I think is up there. And then just use RCAP, and I think that should get you 30 minutes. And you can just pick a time that works for you. It should be synced up with my calendar, and we can chat.
Great. Okay, well, it looks like we're just at the hour. Does anyone have any final question or anything before we log off here? And please take advantage of the consultation with Jared. I'd really love to hear your guys' thoughts on how you might employ something like this in each of your individual communities. I mean, I obviously have some ideas, but it's really up to you guys. All right. Maybe we need to do this later in the day because you guys are kind of quiet this morning.
You can't pass out coffee virtually.
I know.
No, that's true.
So.
Well, and I totally agree with Roberta that we would love to see all of you take advantage of this and, and see whether, there is some real interest. Then we can talk about, other, future engagements to try to get something. So I realize that, it's one thing to hear something, and it's another thing when you start actually digging in and trying to do things yourself. Then you start to realize all the questions you should have asked.
Yeah.
So, that's something that we, definitely could entertain helping you with through the grant that we have. So, if you feel that this is something that's right for your community, definitely take advantage of this. And then if you need more help than that, then let's talk about that too.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Jared. This has been really, really a great presentation, and I think hopefully some of you feel inspired. Some people said in the comments they felt it was inspiring, and I agree. So hopefully some of you will rethink the way you do things. So that's the whole idea of doing this webinar series, is to just get you thinking in a different way. So. And I love the quote too. I actually, the first time I ran into the quote that you used at the end, the first time I encountered that was when I was snooping around on your website after you presented at Kauffman. And I saw that in one of the annual reports that you did. Yeah. And I actually called Roberta and I was like, oh my God, I love this so much. Because that just really hit me that, that is so true. And I actually used it with a presentation that I gave for Moldova, which I don't know if you're familiar with Moldova, but it's a small country that used to be one of the Soviet republics and now is an independent country, borders Ukraine, it's like between Romania and Ukraine. So I was doing a presentation for small communities there, and I liked that quote so much that I had to use that, because I was like, trying to really get them to think differently as well. And I thought, wow, this is just so perfect. So I stole your quote.
That's great. Use it. This is for the good of rural. Anything that's good. I'm a rural guy, and I want to see what people think about rural totally different. And you all are the champions out there helping make that happen. So I appreciate you. I believe in you. You can do it.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you all.
Everyone. Well, you all enjoy the rest of your Friday, and we'll let you know about the next one that'll be coming up in early November.
December,
sorry. I'm going backwards.
Bye.